Very pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Great.
Dr. Birol,
Yeah.
nice meeting you.
Nice to meet
and thank
you
you.
too. Yeah, my name is Fatih Birol. I am a fellow engineer. I studied power engineering in Istanbul and then in PhD in Technical University of Vienna. And I worked in Vienna, in Paris now. Since almost 25 years, I am at the International Energy Agency. And I had the pleasure to visit the TU Delft a few times. And I am a strong supporter of Galatasaray.
Ah, that is great.
Yeah.
What do you see as the main challenge related to getting electricity to all world citizens?
Energy access has been a major preoccupation for the International Energy Agency. We are an organization of 38 governments around the world, but we look at the entire world and we look at all energy sectors and all technologies. Oil, gas, coal, renewables, nuclear power, all of them, electric cars, the carbon capture and storage, hydrogen is a major preoccupation. And when we look at the entire world, to be honest with you, for me, energy access has been a key issue. And in the year 2000, almost 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, we first started, first in the IEA and first in the world, to count how many people do not have access to electricity. Until that time, there was no number. And as engineers, we all know that if you take a problem seriously, you first measure it. We measured it. Today, in the 21st century, there is still 1 billion people who have no electricity. Now, how did it happen? We have, when we started this work some 20 years ago, there were 3 problematic areas in big terms: China, India, and Africa. Electricity access problem now is almost exclusively an African problem. Today, in Africa, 2 out of 3 people have no access to electricity. It's a major preoccupation for us. And I should also tell you that when we say energy access, electricity access is not the only problem. This is one of the 2 hallmarks of the energy poverty. One of them is electricity access, the other one is cooking. According to numbers of the International Energy Agency, our numbers, today, 2.7 billion people, they use wood, agricultural waste, animal waste for cooking purposes, and it causes a lot of respiratory diseases, especially for women and children. And this is something unacceptable. We work with the World Health Organization, WHO, and we see that the premature deaths from respiratory diseases caused by this type of cooking is more of a problem than HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases.
How you see the role of the government and of markets in solving these problems?
Yeah. So Africa is a major point of interest for the IEA and personally for me. In Africa today, the amount of energy resources, oil, gas, solar power, wind, hydropower, this is more than enough, this potential, to cover the entire energy needs of Africa. So therefore, the continent is blessed with a lot of energy resources. Where is the problem? In my view, problem is also not the capital. It's not the main problem. The main problem is having the right energy policies and right governance structure. It is the reason our work this year has focused with working with those governments, with those ministers, from South Africa to Senegal, from Senegal to Benin, from Benin to Morocco, how we can have the best energy policies, learning from the good examples from different countries, and how we can make the most out of these resources there, and bring the energy to the people, to the economy. Therefore, African economy starts to grow strongly and bring wealth, prosperity to African people. In my view, the lack of energy is the main stumbling block of the development of Africa, for which IEA is heavily engaged.
Do you think market forces can also make sure that infrastructure is invested in and also rural areas have access to electricity services?
So, in general, when we look at the energy sector, I believe the market-based instruments play a very important role in terms of the good, right allocation of the resources and using them efficiently. But when it comes to the access to electricity, leaving everything to the markets will not work. I can tell you. There is a need for governmental determined policy push. Otherwise, it will not work, because many private companies, in fact, all private companies, their foremost objective is maximize their profits. It is why they are built. They want to get the money, bring it to their shareholders, and so on. So some of the steps taken to bring power to poor people may not be as profitable as compared to other portfolios, other investment choices. So therefore, in my view, there's a very strong role and responsibility, I underline, responsibility for the governments to bring electricity to its citizens. In my view, bringing electricity is not only an energy issue, it is a human rights issue as well. So it is the reason I believe when I talk with the leaders of governments, I tell them it is not an option, it's a responsibility for your government to bring electricity to your citizens. Institutional problems are different in different countries. In terms of Africa, shaping the right policies, putting the right policies in place is a major problem. So, for example, they have a lot of solar potential, and which technology to choose, and what kind of market instruments to be put in place in order to incentivize the people in the villages, people in the cities to buy the solar panels. There is not enough experience there, and we are bringing that experience to them. When it comes to advanced economies, in Europe or North America and elsewhere, I think we need to understand that the energy issue shouldn't be left only to the energy ministries, because it is becoming much more of a complex issue. The transportation ministry, the housing ministry, industry ministry, the environmental ministries, they should be all involved and well coordinated. I think this is a challenge, that how the energy policies need to be formulated, especially in the advanced economies.
Very clear. If you look on the tremendous progress that has been made in terms of energy access, we also see that the progress has been can be attributed to fossil fuel electricity production. The electricity sector seems more and more entrenched in fossil fuels. What do you see as maybe the options to also have more renewable into the mix?
So when I look at, for example, we were talking about Africa. Yeah. When I look at Africa, I see that in Africa, the solar and hydropower renewables will play much bigger role than they did for China or India. There are two reasons behind it. One of them is the solar is now much cheaper today compared to 20 years ago, because their cost went down. And second, there is a lot of sun in Africa, even more than Netherlands, if I may say so. So therefore, I expect renewables will grow very strong there. Having said that, if the countries bring electricity to their people, if they choose, in addition to renewables, as we talk, Mozambique, Tanzania, they have a lot of natural gas. If they use natural gas, I have no problem with that. We cannot put the responsibility of the global emissions on African people. Africa's responsibility today on global emissions is less than 1.5%. So therefore, to tell the Africans when we sit in Paris or in Amsterdam or in New York or in Tokyo, no, you cannot, you should only use renewables, it is not a position that I would share. We should leave the decision to the African governments, African people. If they use renewables, it's the best way, but if they think for their economies, natural gas is the solution today, they should go for that. Because for me, it is very important that those power plants provide electricity to the villages for the parents to keep the medication of their children in the refrigerator. If we want to reduce the emissions, there are many places in the world which can reduce the emissions much easier than in Africa with less pain.
Okay, thank you. Very interested in more broader set of solution, also focusing on the local communities and which options we could provide them with, and also how we could facilitate, for example, more local approaches to energy access.
Yes, our numbers show that in terms of solar, for example, we see more and more off-grid solutions. The rooftop solar is a major success story. And in Africa, in many parts of Africa, in Kenya, in Ghana, just to give you two examples, in Senegal, Benin, there are many good examples using solar energy to bring electricity. And it is, in fact, very cost effective because you do not need to build transmission lines, distribution lines, which is intensive in terms of capital and also not very easy to construct. So therefore, for the rural areas, it is, in my view, much better to make use of distributed solar, the off-grid solutions. It can be mini hydropower and other biogas.
Supported with policy as well.
Definitely, without policy it wouldn't work. Again, we need the government policies here. We come back to what we have discussed. But I believe it will be the main electricity provider, the renewables, the distributed generation will be the main provider of electricity in those countries.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your inspiration for all our learners and for the team. Thank you, and we will follow all the efforts of the International Energy Agency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.